Hello and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. So we are now moving on to the Nemesis expansion, which is part 2 of Mercadian Masks block. So in this video we are going to look at the first deck from Nemesis, which is Breakdown, which is a blue-green deck, which is exciting. I really like blue-green as a colour combination, so I'm excited to look at this one and talk about it. So let's have a look at the deck list here. So we have 21 creatures, we have 5 enchantments, 2 artifacts, 6 instants, 2 sorceries, 24 land, mana curve off to the side there as normal. Let's look at some of these creatures. So, a big theme of this deck is a new mechanic that was introduced in Nemesis, which is fading. So fading is an ability where when you play the creature or permanent, because like some enchantments have fading, it comes in with a certain number of fading counters, and at the start of your upkeep you remove a fade counter from it, and if you can't, you sacrifice it. So yeah, it's basically you only have it for a limited amount of time before it fades away. So what this means is that you can have creatures that are quite efficiently costed, but obviously with the with the downside that you're not going to have them all game. So it encourages you, I suppose, to be like quite aggressive with them, like take action. You can't just like play them and kind of sit back, play it safe. You've got to kind of use them before because you're eventually going to lose them anyway. In many regards, I think it's a bit like Echo from Urza's block in that it's kind of a way to have like quite big creatures efficiently costed, though with a drawback. I think this does it better than Echo. I think there's upsides and downsides to both. This doesn't require extra mana, but with Echo at least, if you pay the Echo cost, you get to keep it. Then for the whole game, or not the whole game, but you don't have a ticking clock. But anyway, let's have a look at these fading creatures. So, Blastoderm is pretty much, I think, the best one. I find it kind of crazy this was a common. So 4 mana for a 5/5 with Shroud, which is very good. Even though you only have it for well, technically it's 4 turns with fading. There, so in Time Spiral, fading kind of got changed into vanishing, which the only difference between fading and vanishing is that vanishing is usually 1 turn extra, but the creature is sacrificed when you take off the last counter. As this, it gets sacrificed if you can't remove a counter. I think there's a design document online somewhere about why they did that, but so yeah, Blastoderm, really good, really big, stompy creature. Wood Ripper, 4/6 for 5, fading 3, has an ability where you can remove fade counters from it to destroy artifacts, which is pretty strong. I like that some of these creatures use fade counters as a resource for abilities. I think that's like a nice. I think it's just nice design space to work with. Full playset of Skyshroud Ridgeback, which is 2/3 for 1, but fading 2, which doesn't mean you get it for that long, but it's fine because it would a 2/3 is, I think, going to become irrelevant quite quickly. And then this is one of the rares in the deck, Skyshroud Behemoth, who is honestly quite disappointing. So 7 mana for a 10/10, comes into play tap, doesn't have trample, like no evasive abilities whatsoever. He's the big dumb 10/10 and fading 2. So you don't get him for very long at all, and he can be chump blocked by just a 1/1. So very disappointing rare, Skyshroud Behemoth. Honestly, like Blastoderm, I think is genuinely better. But that's kind of the theme of this kind of block, is that a lot of the rares are usually not very good at all. So we have the rest of the creatures here. So we have a Rusting Golem. 2 of those. It's 4 mana for a it's fading 5, and it has Paratopsy equals number of fade counters on it. So I guess when you would have attacked with this, it's 5/5 when it comes in, and then the first time you get to really attack with it, it's a 4/4, which, I mean, for colourless is okay. It's an okay rate for the time, and then it just would have obviously gotten progressively weaker. So that's Rusting Golem is okay. I still think that's better than Skyshroud Behemoth. Full playset of Cloudscape, which is fun. Always like it when a precon gives a full full playset of things. Just a 2/2 flyer with fading 3. Stronghold Zeppelin is 4 mana for a 3/3 with flying, and what's sometimes called the high flying ability, where it can only block other creatures with flying. Like 4 mana, I guess this is fine. I mean, it's like fairly big in the air. It's okay. And then 3 Waterfront Bouncer, which is a Spell Shaper. So Spell Shapers are, well, this one's from Arcadian Masks, but we will see some Spell Shapers from the Nemesis set as we go on. So Spell Shapers, you pay a cost, you discard a card, and the whole idea is they shape that card into a different spell. So Waterfront Bouncer does unsummon. Has a little bit of synergy in this deck because you can bounce your own stuff back to your hand to kind of and play them again to like reset their fading counters. Like if you really wanted to do that, that's an option. So that's but I mean most of the time you're gonna be bouncing opponents' creatures to get rid of attackers or blockers or set them back. And then a Vine Trellis, which is the 0/4 wall, which taps to add 1 green. Quite like it when a mana dork like this is a bit survivable, like has quite a chunky body, so it can pull double duty by blocking and surviving. And then we move on to the spells. So Seal of Strength. So there's a cycle of seals in Nemesis, which are they're cheap enchantments. They come down, and you can sacrifice them for an effect. And the sacrifice is instant speed, no cost. So, is this better than Giant Growth? Because there's pros and cons. Giant Growth obviously stays in your hand, and it can be done at instant speed, and your opponent can't see that you have it. Whereas Seal of Strength is out on the table. They can see it. They know it's going to come at some point. But Giant Growth, you have to leave the mana open. Whereas Seal of Strength, you can play that kind of any turn, and then it's there until you need it. And in a way, like it being there is can act as a deterrence. Like an opponent might play around it, and like you don't have to activate it. So, yeah, I think Seal of Strength is okay. I still prefer Giant Growth. I think it being kind of hidden information in your hand edges it out over this, but I appreciate this being here as well. Like these are fun. There's a whole cycle of these, one in each color, that all do kind of like a signature spell of that color. Revive, just a sorcery, gives you a green card from your graveyard back into your hand for 2 mana. That's fine, and that's pretty good. Gets any green card, which is fine, which means you can get non-creatures with it as well. So yeah, that's okay. Then a bunch of blue spells. These are all enchantments actually. Yeah. So Dehydration. Like I don't think it's the first of these, but it's but we usually always see like these kind of blue. The enchanted creature doesn't untap, like keeps it locked down. This I think is one of the first ones. And it's obviously very expensive. A lot of these spells these days are usually A, cheaper, and B, tap the creature as they come into play. This you've got to wait until something is tapped and then put it down. Like this doesn't do anything to creatures with the vigilance, so it's just very expensive. And there is a chance that it doesn't really like do anything. It doesn't turn off things like activated abilities. It's just basically kind of like a worse arrest or pacifism. False Demise is quite fun. 3 mana aura. When the enchanted creature dies, you get it back into play under your control. That's quite fun. Put it on one of your creatures so it can survive and come back. Put it on an opponent's creature that's going to die, and then you get it. I think that's a fine card for 3. Sealer Removal is the blue seal. Sacrifice it to do unsummon. Again, I think having unsummon in your hand and playing it at instant speed, and your opponent doesn't know you have it, I think that works better as a kind of a combat trick. But again, this is fine having it on the table. I suppose you don't have to leave the mana open to do an unsummon. You have it on the table. Again, it kind of acts as a deterrence because an opponent might be like, oh, if I play my big creature, like they're just going to bounce it straight away. Or maybe I'll hold off. I don't know. But it's fine. Would have liked to see more of these, actually. The same with Seal of Strength. Like, I think 2 copies of each of those wouldn't have been terrible. And then War Tax, which is kind of like propaganda. with the disadvantage that like if you don't put any mana into it, it does nothing. But if you sink all your mana to it, it can potentially be better than propaganda. I think propaganda is still better, just because it doesn't need mana to do anything. But propaganda is also a very strong card. So I think this is fine as a sort of a as an alternative. Full playset of accumulated knowledge. So 2 blue for an one colourless, 1 blue even for an instant. Draw a card, then draw cards equal to the number of accumulated knowledge cards in all graveyards. So if you remember back in Tempest Block, if you've been watching these videos, there was a card called Kindle. And Kindle was a card that did 2 damage, and they did 1 extra damage for every card called Kindle in all graveyards. So this is kind of like a blue Kindle. And yeah, I think it's pretty good. Like, I think being at instant speed, I think even paying 2 mana to draw 1 card at instant speed is not awful. There's definitely worse cards, but you know, once you're drawing 2 or more cards off this, it's really good, I think. So yeah, really happy to see a full play set of those. I think that's like a pretty good card. And then in Snare, 3 colors and a blue. You can return 2 islands you control to owner's hand instead of paying Ensnare's cost, and you tap all creatures. So 4 mana instant to tap all creatures is a little expensive for that effect, but it's, you know, it's basically okay, especially at instant speed. The fact that you can do it without having to have 4 mana open, it sets you back, I suppose, like by, you know, returning your own islands to your hand, so it sets you back in terms of like mana curve. But the option to be able to do it is good, I think. And this thing, like this whole block has, you know, a cycle of these pitch spells, or, you know, spells with alternate cost, and it is usually like you pay the mana cost and it's slightly overcosted for what it does, or if you need to, it's the free casting cost, or yeah, not it's not free, but you know, there's, you know, it doesn't involve mana. So yeah, it's just nice to have that flexibility, I suppose. Puffer Extract, very expensive artifact for 5. X and tap, target creature you control gets +X on end of turn. Destroy it at end of turn. So this kind of combo is okay with like fading creatures, which like you're gonna lose anyway, I suppose. You've also got, I suppose, like the false demise. If you get control of an opponent's creature, you can use it on that. You've got, I suppose, you've got bounce effects, you've got like sealer removal and waterfront bouncer, so you can bounce the creature back to your hand before it dies. It's very expensive, but I think being able to give like a repeatable plus, because this doesn't sacrifice itself, it is just always there. I don't think it's as bad as I first thought. Now that I've like looked at it, because it's in a previous deck and that I've looked at, and it's okay. I mean, for the time, I think this was fine. And then the other rare in the deck is Parallax Inhibitor. So it's 2 mana for an artifact. 1 tap, sacrifice it, put a fade counter on each permanent with a fading you control. That is very weak. Just to give all your fading things just essentially 1 extra turn. This, I think that would have been fine without the sacrifice. If it had just been maybe like 2 and tap, gets a, you know, without the sacrifice, and then it puts a fade counter on everything. Or maybe like X tap, put X fade counters on a permanent with fading. I don't think it needed to sacrifice. I think that's quite a weak rare. Like, it obviously has synergy with the deck, but it's very weak. Like, this could have been a better card. There's like a lot of potential designs it could have gone through to be a better card, but you know, that's a discussion for another day. And then we just have 2 non-basic lands here: Hickory Woodlot and Saprotan Scary. So these are part of the depletion land cycle in Masks block. So there were storage lands and there's depletion lands. Storage lands where you charge them up with counters, and then you can take the counters off and get mana equal to the number of counters you take off. They come in with depletion counters. You remove depletion counters, you get 2 mana when you tap it, but then you essentially only get 2 uses out of them before they go away. So this is fine to get like a kind of little extra mana boost. Would have been nice maybe if they were you could tap them to get colorless, but yeah, it's getting a little greedy, I suppose. So what could have been? I think this deck overall is like kind of okay. I said the rares are disappointing, which is why Rocks is here. It doesn't have fading, to sort of tie into the theme, but like at the end of the day, fading is it's not, it's fading is a drawback at the end of the day. And it's not really a mechanic you want to like play around. It's not like a theme. It's not you'd say like, oh, I want creatures with flying, or I want flashback as a theme. Like fading as a theme is inherently setting you up for a bad time because it's just all drawback. So rocks, I think, would have been a fine rare to replace Skyshard Behemoth. Just I just think rocks is really strong, solid. Sapling Burst does have fading, so there would have been a little synergy there. This does show up in another precon we're going to look at, but basically you take off fading counters to create saplings. It's fine. Dominate is just a mind control effect. So yeah, that would have been fine in here as well, I think. And Jolting Merfolk is just another blue creature with fading that uses its fade counters as a resource for ability. So I think this would have been okay to have it instead of the Skyship, the 3/3 flyer, whatever it was, just because it ties into the theme, and you could potentially just play this for remove all its fade counters right away, just tap 4 things, and that could probably swing a combat. So in summary, I think this deck's okay. I say the rares are a little disappointing, but it's nice that you get like quite a lot of copies of some of the core cards. You got I think 3 full play sets. You have the accumulated knowledges in here as well, and you have 4 Cloud Skates and 4 of the Ridgebacks. So yeah, I think this is okay. Just being consistent in that way, I think bumps up a little bit. There's a few cards that could have done extra copies with like the seals, but yeah, overall I think this is just kind of okay. I would have been all right owning this one and playing it. But what do you think? What do you think after looking at the deck here? Did you have this deck? Did you play it? What changes did you make to it? I'd really like to know. Put a comment below, and I'll give them a read. But yeah, I'll be back next time to look at another Nemesis pre-constructed deck. But until then, thank you for watching and listening, and have a good day.